Our next workshop is Transporting Energy Out of COVID. This workshop will discuss the utilities and transportation sectors and the outlook moving forward after the pandemic. The moderator for this workshop is my colleague, Mr. Dave Thomas, operator and project director for the Chicago MBDA Business Center. Introducing Mr. Thomas and this phenomenal workshop is Danielle Bly, Vice President, Supplier Diversity, WEC Energy Group Business Services. Danielle, we thank you for joining us. Please, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Tony. As stated, I am Danielle Bly, Vice President, Supplier Diversity for WEC Energy Group and Peoples Gas. WEC Energy Group is the parent company of 7 regulated electric and natural gas utilities in Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota. We serve 4.6 million customers, have 71,000 miles of electric distribution lines, 51,400 of natural gas distribution and transmission pipes, 7,300 employees, and we were recently named one of America's most responsible companies, Newsweek. Here in Illinois, our holdings include Peoples Gas and North Shore Gas. Together, they serve more than 1 million residential and business customers in Chicago and 54 communities in the North Shore area. Supplier diversity at Peoples Gas and North Shore Gas is not just a program. It's basically the way we do. Peoples Gas and North Shore Gas are increasing investments with certified minority, women, service disabled, and veteran-owned businesses in the communities we serve. We strongly believe in corporate social responsibility, and we value different ethnicities, genders, and backgrounds. Supplier diversity expands our competitive and qualified supplier base for goods and services, which foster innovation. They lead to improved supplier performance, enhance job creation, and generate additional purchasing power in the Chicagoland area. Peoples Gas and North Shore Gas are proud members of the Chicago MSDC, and we're proud to support the 54th Annual Chicago Business Opportunity Fair. It's now my pleasure to introduce you to Dave Thomas, who, as stated, will moderate our next session. Dave Thomas is the project director for the MBDA Business Center, which is operated by the Chicago MSDC, and he'll be the moderator for today's utility and transportation discussion. Before joining Chicago MSDC 13 years ago, Dave was a supplier diversity manager for Nicor Gas, and before that with BP. Dave, I'm happy to turn it over to you at this time.
Dave, you're muted.
I think we can hear you now, Dave.
Okay. Am I good now? This afternoon, this panel, it's interesting the way we came up with this panel. When we thought about the utility industry and the transportation industry, we realized we were talking about two industries where they're sort of at the polar ends of the spectrum when it comes to MBE participation. Our research has shown that we have quite a few MBEs that have been fortunate enough to work in the utility space with companies such as Peoples Gas and Nicor and Exelon, ComEd locally. But on the transportation side, the representation of MBEs is not quite to that extent. But what they have in common was they were both impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic last year. So we felt this would be a good opportunity to hear from people from both of those industries and to learn about their experiences during the last year, how they dealt with the pandemic, how they managed to come out of it, and how they see those moving forward in the future. So without any further ado, I'll introduce our panel. We have Ms. Ashley Woods, the president of Dam from Hauling, They're an MBE out of the St. Louis area. They are recommended to us by my counterpart in St. Louis, Mr. Todd Gill. We also have Mr. Tavares Campbell, the founder of Campbell Transport. Next, we have Duane K Barlow, the president of BART Group of Illinois. And finally, we have Mr. George Williams, chairman and CEO of PMI Energy Solutions. So seeing as how I believe we're the last workshop of the day and probably the only thing standing between you and the rest of yours, we'll go ahead and get things started. So let's start by having the panelists to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about your business. Let's start with Ashley.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for hanging in there with us. I'm really excited to share. My name is Ashley Woods. Everyone calls me Lay. I am the CEO of Dam Freight and Hauling. We are a transportation and freight company based out of St. Louis, Missouri. We have a small fleet of tractors here, and we do dry and refrigerated goods across the nation, transporting the consumer's products. So we are a new company, but we have fought our way through COVID, and I'm really excited to share with you our journey this afternoon and kind of some of the good and the bad of being in the transportation industry, especially starting during COVID. So thank you for having me.
Go to Tavares Campbell. Tavares, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here, Dave. How you doing?
All right.
How's everybody doing today? My name is Tavares Campbell. The name of my company is Campbell Transport LLC. We're a fuel hauling business in the Chicagoland area. We were doing local BP and mobiles. We currently expanded our business to a little bit more throughout the Midwest, hauling ethanol and still some other petroleum products. We currently, we're also a small company, but as Ashley said, we're clawed our way through COVID as well. Thanks for having me here.
Thanks, appreciate you being with us today. Let's go to Mr. Barlow next. Dwayne, please introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about your business.
Okay, thank you. I'm Duane Barlow with the Bartech Group. I started my electrical career in the utility space, and I stayed there for about 26 years, but I've always had sort of an entrepreneurial spirit. So about 11 years ago, I went out and purchased a majority interest in electrical construction business. We've kind of morphed that business into electrical and fencing, and we do have 4 lines of business: electrical, which is high and low voltage electrical. The fencing group, we do chain link all the way up to the security fencing around substations, etc. We have a transit division as well, where we install and remove high voltage rail and its related equipment. And last but not least, we have a professional services group where we offer quality control services and construction management. A lot of times it's related to the work that we do and the customers that we serve. But that's a little bit about myself and Bartech, and thanks for having us, Dave.
Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Dwayne. Appreciate you being with us today, and looking forward to learning more about your company and your experiences. Let's go to George Williams now. George, if you please tell us a bit about yourself and about your business, we'd appreciate it.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having us. My name is George Williams. I'm the chairman and CEO of PMI Energy Solutions. I've been in the utility industry for over 37 years. Like Dwayne, I spent 27 years on the corporate side of the business, started off as an electrical engineer and left the corporate side as the chief operating officer of a utility. And I spent a lot of time in various executive roles with ComEd, with Entergy, and several other entities out there without me going into any detail. My company, PMI Energy Solutions, performs overhead and underground electrical distribution work for utilities. We do street light installations, directional boring, and we do our base load work for utilities like ComEd, Ameren, and also on the East Coast for Pico Energy Company. And then we perform storm restoration all over the country. And like all of you, we've had a lot of challenges during the pandemic, and we look forward to discussing some of those challenges and successes during our session today. Thanks for having me.
Okay, well, thanks for bringing that up, George. I guess we'll segue in that, with that. Let's get into talking about just exactly what type of things, you guys had to go through during that pandemic last year. Obviously, it was, the biggest thing on everybody's mind, last year with the shutdown of many services and businesses. Yet I'm happy to see that you guys seem to have come through it, fairly well. So let's talk about, some of the things that you had to endure last year. I know a lot of people had to deal with canceled contracts or postponed contracts or loss of employees. If you can, let's start with you. Talk about, some of the things that you had to, deal with, this past year and coming to grips with what was happening to the country with this pandemic.
Now, Dave, I wasn't sure if you said my name because there's been a little bit of static.
Yeah.
You start with me? All right, thanks, Dave. Some of the challenges that we had to deal with, first of all, was shutting down the business from an office perspective altogether. I mean, we had a period of about 3-4 months where we did not have any of our employees in the office, yet we had our field employees out there working because my business was considered to be essential and we support the utilities. So we had our people working out in the field and the back office people all working from home. And we were worried about whether we were going to have the infrastructure to support our people and keep the business going. So we did learn that, hey, with the telephones and the computers, things were working out pretty well. The big challenge was we were getting a lot of people sick. We probably had about a dozen people that took ill during that time, and the CDC required that they have 14 days quarantine. Well, when you don't have your people working out in the field, those people aren't making you any money. So that's a challenge in itself. And then you had to also worry about, did they get other people sick? And you had to be cautious and have people take off, or if someone was in the office, you had to sanitize the building, because we did have a couple of people that got sick in the office when we did return to the office. And if someone tested positive, you basically had to shut down the whole office, sanitize the office. And that happened to us 3 times during the COVID, which was really challenging. The other piece was initially we had a hard time getting the PPE. I mean, simple things as masks, was required that these people had to use these masks when they couldn't social distance, but it was difficult getting the mask. Now you can get masks everywhere, but that was not the case when this all first started. So that was a little disappointing. Then we had the big transportation issue where the utilities that we were serving could not get materials that we needed to do our jobs. So we were back and forth about whether you can keep the people in the field. You didn't want to lay anybody off because you're worried about if you lay them off, you wouldn't get them back. So it really had a big impact on the business and almost everything that you take for granted. And then if certain people were to get sick, we really didn't have a business continuity plan to say, okay, we got this backup person. In the world that we're in, you can't afford to have a lot of bench strength. It's got to be, your key players got to be ready to go. Well, the sickness and all these other things were something we weren't used to, and it turned out to be a big challenge. But I can talk for every day, but I'm going to shut up and let some of the other panelists speak as well. But thank you.
Thank you, George. I appreciate that. That's I can imagine how much stuff that is you have to deal with on a daily basis. Let's hear from Ashley. Ashley, the same question. Talk to us a little bit about some of the things that you had to endure during this past year.
Well, it was a bit different for us because we started our business. We started trucking, over the road trucking, because of COVID. As a serial entrepreneur myself, I had a host of other businesses, and this was an opportunity for me to scale my retail business and get into trucking for the shipping aspect. We started trucking because of COVID. We had to shut down the salon. We had to shut down the retail store. So this was an opportunity for me to try out something and implement something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. Now, on the flip side of that, we were very blessed because we didn't get anybody to get sick until, the end of COVID, more of this year, these last couple months. But we got into freight when prices were already low, because of just what had been happening in the industry trends pre-COVID. But no one saw this coming. So luckily for us, because of COVID and because we are considered essential workers as well, of course, continue to get America's consumers their products. Then we saw an inflation in the freight prices. So that was okay. And there was plenty of products for us plenty of work for us to get. But on the flip side of that, also, we weren't eligible for PPP funds or anything of that sort. So that was another issue that we had to work out, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. I don't want to jump the gun. But we did start our business through COVID, and we did find a wonderful opportunity to get into the trucking industry and to learn a lot about running trucks across the nation.
That's that's fantastic. Ashley, it hasn't been too many opportunities where I've heard somebody say that they actually that the pandemic actually allowed them to create a business opportunity. So that's great that you were able to take advantage of that and turn it into a business. So let me my buddy Mr. Barlow now. Dwayne, if you can tell us a bit about the kinds that you and the Bartech group had to endure this past year.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. One of the biggest challenges that we had was probably similar to same things that George had, and really it was getting our staff to be able to work from home. Our company does have a business continuity plan, but you can have that business continuity plan, but making it actually functional and using it, we never had to use it before. So, making sure folks had laptops and printers and to be able to do their work from home. And then, as the pandemic went on for months and months, there was a need to have some staggered office schedules. So, our accounting group, that's one of the groups that is very necessary to be in the office. So we had to develop a staggered schedule. So usually we have, 45 folks in the office here. So to spread those folks out, and so they're 6 feet apart, wearing masks, et cetera, et cetera. So that was a bit of a challenge for us too, making sure that we weren't getting folks sick at work, So that's probably one of the bigger ones, but there's several, and I could keep going on and on, like George said, but that's probably one of the biggest impacts. Oh, and jokingly, getting folks to use Skype and don't stand up with your gym shorts on. So just have the headshots. I'm joking about that. I saw that on a commercial, but
if you're in tune to the internet and the things like YouTube, we've all probably seen more than our fair share of what can happen when you're not used to being in front of a camera at home. So that's good advice, Dwayne. Let's hear from Tavares. Tavares, tell us a bit about what this last year has been like for you.
It was probably more similar to George and Dwayne's, a little different just because it's transportation. So hauling fuel, you got to see a lot of different things happening in the Chicagoland area, from all of a sudden one day it's bumper to bumper traffic till the very next day it's no traffic at all. So with that said, there's no cars been on the road, there's no gas stations buying fuel either, so there's nowhere to deliver. So then you deal with that, right? And then other than that, if you have stations that actually have customers or employees that got sick, they have to shut the station down for 14 days to re-clean the station. So I had a couple of situations where that happened to probably 2 of the stations I was delivering to. So I probably lost, I want to say over half of my work during that time, but you just slowly see as the state was going through the different phases and Chicago was going through the different phases, you could see traffic picking back up kind of day by day. That was based on the amount of loads that I was pulling per week. So it was a challenging time just because some days you could have a really good week, but other weeks it could kind of be like it just started, especially when they got to go back a phase or something like that. So that was kind of what I had to put up with.
Okay, thanks for that, Tavares. Appreciate that. Ashley touched on something that it's a good time to jump into it now, and that's the issue of the assistance that was being offered by local, state, and federal governments when it came to CARE funding for things like EIDL loans and PPP loans. I know the Chicago Minority Supply Development Council, through its BDA Business Center, had a CARES Act program, as did my counterpart down in St. Louis, and there are other local agencies that had similar programs to try and educate people on the services and the funding that was available to them. But there were probably some varying stories on just how successful people were in being able to make use of those funds. So let me start with you, George. When it came to take advantage of some of the funding and some of the other assistance that was made available by the federal government and even local government and with our banks, can you talk a bit about whether or not you were able to take advantage of any of those programs, and did they actually, benefit your business?
Absolutely, Dave. We were very successful in obtaining a PPP loan, and I'll tell you what happened with it afterwards. But one of the keys that we found that helped us to be successful was having an established banking relationship. If you had an established banking relationship, it really helped you to get in the door quicker. And the other key was, as soon as the program was announced, you need to jump on it right away and make sure that you applied for the loans. A lot of people I found turned out that they waited until the last minute to apply for the loans, to where either the loans were not available to them or the banks were so saturated with requests that they could not respond to these individuals. So having the banking relationship was really key. The other big important piece was having your paperwork in order. When they're asking you for payroll over the past year to demonstrate that you did have the employees and you did have the financial need, you had some people, I mentor and coach a lot of other entrepreneurs. A lot of them may have had payroll for a few weeks or a month. But if you didn't have it for that extended period of time, you couldn't apply for those bigger loans. So having your paperwork and your financial house in order, as you would say, was very key. Now, I was successful in getting a pretty sizable loan, but I had to give my loan back because it turned out that my partner that I was partnered with, they had an affiliate rule. And my partner had a company that had 10,000 employees, and they considered my partner to be financially able to be able to provide us loans or whatever we might need to keep our business sound. Now, we weren't challenged on that yet, but just talking to my partner, we felt as though it would have put us at risk to not only accept the funds, but to use it, and then turn out that we find that we violate the affiliation rules and there's a penalty associated with that. But I was very successful in getting the loan, and I got it pretty quickly. and sizable, but I had to give it back. But it was no challenge getting it. It was just making sure that you had all your financial papers in order, you applied quickly, and you had a banking relationship. But I still regret to the day not being able to use that money, because I could have used it. I don't care what my affiliation was with my partner. They might be doing super well, but PMI needed that money. But that's all I would say.
Dwayne, you want to that?
Sure, I can take a shot at it. I, like George, jumped on the PPP loan pretty quickly, and we were successful get the loan. We didn't give it back, George. We actually used it. So, but the thing is that it was very helpful because there were a lot of uncertainties at the time, and folks were the GCs that we work for, and nothing against them, but everybody, even us, was we're watching our money. So where payments slowed down, folks paying us, the PPP loan came in right at the right time, to keep things moving. We got paid by our GCs, but it wasn't, as timely because, folks didn't know what was going to happen. So, but for us, the PPP loan came in very handy, and we jumped on it right away. We actually have our internal accounting team, but we have an external accountant that does our accounting as well, our taxes, etc. So we turned that over to our external accounting team, and they were familiar with it and had helped other companies that they work with. So they were familiar with the process and got us through it pretty quickly.
From Ashley now. Ashley, I think you may have had a slightly different experience. So tell us about your experience in dealing with these PPP and EIDL and all this other stuff that the government was trying to make available to us.
Well, everything that Duane and George said was so on point, especially George when he talked about having that banking relationship and having your paperwork and all of your business in order, right? So, as a serial entrepreneur, I do have to say that business credit and having all of my ducks in a row and being prepared really helped, because I started Dan Freight and Hauling during the pandemic, like I stated before. So if you didn't have any taxes from 2019, any paperwork from 2019 or anything before the pandemic, then you did not qualify. And we didn't start Dan Freight and Hauling until March. However, for the last 9 years, my other business has been growing their business credit. We've been having payroll with them and keeping our banking relationships. We'd really been following the steps and doing everything we were supposed to do and building up for this time that we didn't see coming. So when we couldn't get PPP funds, we were able to secure regular business loans and business loan products from our banking relationships that we had really cultivated well. So while everybody else was in these long lines for PPP, we went right to the front for other business loans, which the bank was happy to give us because, banks make money through our interest, through these loans, through these products. So everybody running to get PPP, I mean, I don't know what they get, but I know they don't get very much money from it. So they were happy. They were happy to give us, the funds that we needed at very low interest rates, and we're happy to walk us through the process and make sure that we were taken care of. So I was actually able to get 3 tractors, 3 trailers, and business capital in order to keep our trucks running, which was huge, because trucking is a large expense, especially the insurance and just all the finite details of it. It can get really, really, really expensive. So we did desperately need funds, but we were able to get those funds because we had a banking relationship, because we had all of our paperwork, and most importantly, we had been growing our business credit consecutively for 8 years. So we were right on time for what we needed.
That's That's so while guys like Dwayne and Drew are over there and all that government money, you would have slid right in and got got a regular business loan and were able to grow a business that way. That's a great story, especially in the circumstances. That's a sharp businesswoman there. I wanted to take a little time to talk about sort of some of the things that you might consider doing differently the months leading to the pandemic. There were a few months gone by when news of the virus first hit. It seemed like a lot of sort of got caught not being quite prepared for what would eventually mean. So now that you've been through something like this, how would you prepare differently, or what type of steps have you taken or you consider taking the way that you run a business, so that not that you can make it pandemic proof, but that certainly will help you to stem the tide a little better if something like this ever comes around again. And let's start this time with Tavares. What kind of things do you think you might consider doing different, Tavares, to make sure that there's so much of an impact with a shutdown like this? I guess one thing you've already done, which I thought was great, was you transitioned to filling ethanol instead of gasoline. So that was one great step. What else do you yourself, maybe doing differently going forward?
Well, the one, as you mentioned, I did make a transition. So I guess the one thing I would say that I would continue to do different is, if something like this was to happen again, I would continue to try and find where's the need, you know what I'm saying? Because that's where, it's something like this, that's where things become really important, because it's a need no matter where it is. So in this case, it was more trucking companies, or more trucking companies, and I guess you could say like police or public works people that needed fuel versus everyday people. You see what I'm saying? So I switched it to hauling diesel, which then converted to ethanol, because now things are starting to pick up, so people are buying more gas. So one transition kind of automatically changed it to another transition. So I guess just moving forward, I would just continue to look for the need that needs to be met, and shorter terms.
Dwayne, going forward, what kind of things do you think you might do, differently in order to be able to better position to deal with this? Not that you didn't do a really good job, this time around, especially since you didn't have to pay back, any of them that you were able to get. But how will if it became obvious that something like this was prone to happen again, what type of steps, type of preventative mechanisms you might put in place, or anything you might do as far as budget or anything like that, that you might do differently in order to be in a better position for a type of scenario?
Well, Dave, I think, and you heard me mention business continuity plan earlier. I think I would tighten up my business continuity plan as a company, because that's your step-by-step process that tells you, okay, if this happens, do this, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I didn't realize, because we came into the office every day as a team, how ineffective we were in communicating when we weren't face to face. So effective communication amongst your team is very important, especially when you have to change very quickly your day-to-day operations. So I think I would definitely make sure that we're ready to go when it comes from if we were having to move out of the office and work from home, how we communicate. Is it more meetings, with the team, weekly, daily, that type of thing. So you're not dropping, the ball on anything, especially invoicing, getting money into the business, et cetera. You get a check in, it comes in the mail. Next thing you know, how's that check get in the mail? So we worked through those problems, of course, and we figured out the check thing very quickly. So, but those are the things that, just keeping your business running smoothly when something happens. You can't predict, what the pandemic is going to be, but just to be as prepared as you can be is probably one of the things that worried me the most.
Ask you about this, and this is something, I guess one of the words that became more of a household word last year was for Ashley. Imagine for you, your company was it. You already had businesses, but you pivoted to the trucking part. Enhance your other businesses. But from the point of offering different services or trying to create new business opportunities, did any of you have to make pivots to different types of service offering in order to help sort of the tide, while maybe weren't able to do quite as much as you typically do? Let's start with you, George.
So Dave, fortunately for PMI Energy Solutions, our workload did not change. Being that, as I stated earlier, we support utilities, they continued business as usual in terms of the volume of work. It was how it was executed that was different. So I did not have to find new work. The big thing that was a challenge for me is figuring out how to execute the work and how to get the people there. And as I was getting field forces were getting sick and weren't able to show up for work. It ended up cutting down your number of crews, and then that duration of how long they were out was impactful. The other thing was just the office folks being able to do things like Dwayne mentioned earlier, making payroll, doing accounts payable, making sure that our vendors are getting paid, because they'll shut your service down too, because a lot of the vendors were struggling because a lot of their business shut down. So everything that was owed to them, they wanted their money right away. So making sure they get paid was important. And also our accounts receivables, like Dwayne said, those checks that were coming in that were sitting in the mailbox because no one was in the office, we had to assign someone every week to go into their office and at least check the checks, make sure things get out. And until we actually all returned back to the office, that was a chore in itself. How do you determine who was going to do what? But in terms of having to find new business, we did not have that challenge, fortunately, because I do know a lot of my friends who owned restaurants and things like that, where they were totally shut down and they were really in bad shape. So I think the biggest thing is getting a continuity plan, a business continuity plan. I think having that well established in the future is very important, so that if someone gets sick, your business is not missing a beat. The other thing I did learn that I might do differently is maybe I don't need as much space as I have now, because I tell you what, my business functioned well with people working from home, and I have a large office space and warehouse, and the rent is pretty high. So don't think I haven't given more consideration, and maybe I don't need all that space. So, that's all I have, Dave.
Okay, that's fantastic, George. Ashley, you want to jump on that? The look of face saying you were hearing all of that. I guess you were experiencing some of the same things. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so again, as a serial entrepreneur, I guess for the next time around, which hopefully we don't have it next time around, but I wouldn't change anything. However, what I did learn to do was recession-proof all of my businesses. So we make sure that if we can have an online presence or if we can automate in some way, that we are definitely investing into those products and into those services. Um, we do a lot of real estate as well. So anything that we found that we didn't need, any acquisitions that we had, then we did liquidate, which freed up a lot of cash flow. So we were just really looking for where the holes were that we could fill that would help to regain some of that or trap some of that capital that was leaking, so to speak. But yeah, and then just before, all of my affairs were in order, and I'm so grateful for that because I'd been through things before in business where I just had no say and things were forced on me, so I had to figure out how to pivot right then. So I think me going through those types of things before in business got me prepared for the pandemic. So when it came, it didn't necessarily scare me, but it just allowed me to go into survival mode and figure out what did I need to do to survive. Because I felt like a lot of time with the pandemic, it was either you held on to the reins and you got through it or you let them go. It was no gray area, no middle area. Either won or you lost. So it was really important for us to win. And so with that, I just became very optimistic to figure out what I needed to do to be successful. And thank God I was.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate this. I really want to hear from you guys that, get some words of wisdom from you, about, going forward. It looks like we're finally starting to come out of this pandemic and hopefully starting to get back to some sense of normalcy. And in doing so, I'd like to hear from each of you. I guess, what would you say was your best lesson learned from this experience, and how you see the future of your company? Let's start with my buddy, Mr. Barlow.
Well, lessons learned. I think I talked about a lot of the lessons learned as far as what I would do differently. Just first of all, I think I would have taken the pandemic more seriously. And what I mean by that, I took it seriously, but I never thought I'd see a pandemic of this magnitude happen in my lifetime. So we were all watching the news, and next for something like that to happen in America and shut everything down as fast as it happened. I remember I was on a business trip and got back in town on a Friday. By Monday, everything was shut down. So how do you prepare to be shut down? One of the things that I think minority businesses, especially small businesses, have a problem doing is, like Ashley said, you have to work with your banks. And it's always nice to have a little cushion, and we try as hard. I'll talk about Bartech. I was getting ready to say we try as hard as we can to keep a little nest egg of money, but as your business grows, you use a lot of cash. Cash is what grows the business. So I thought about something Ashley just said. She just gave me an idea and she didn't even know it. I actually wrote a note that I think we're going to look at another line of business that could help us with collateral. And I think I might look at some real estate and make it part of our business. So now I will. So I think Dave, just try to be more prepared and take it more seriously when you start hearing these things, and just try to be ready, and cash is king these days.
Hey, Ashley, what you?
Okay, so being probably the youngest in charge here, I just have to say that we've had to claw our way up for so long because I'm first generation. I haven't always been in a position where we can get capital, where I have the credit and all these things. So I've had to figure out, how to make things work. And one of the biggest things that I learned from the pandemic is if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And we use a lot of cash, but that credit, while I was fighting using the cash that I had because I wasn't able to, get any credit lines or do anything, it taught me how to build up my credit. So when I didn't have tangible cash, then you fall back on your credit. Then when you work on your cash, then you can, and they kind of work simultaneously. Also, assets are key because when you accumulate assets, they build. But then when you need to liquidate, you can sell or do whatever you need to do to get cash. So those things have been really important to me. And like I said, I don't ever want to have to depend on anyone. I'm my star player. So if the government isn't going to give me, if I don't have any investors to give me, then what am I going to do? And I need to be able to fall back on my own credentials. And that is my credit and my capital and my cash that I have saved. So I depend on myself and my ability to make things work. And then I stay ready so I don't have to get ready.
Excellent. About Mr. Tavares Campbell, how about you, buddy?
I don't know what else needs to be said. I mean, Ashley and Dwayne pretty much said it all. I mean, that's pretty much what it boils down to. You definitely have to have some kind of nest egg to be able to get through whatever it is you need to get through, even if it's not a pandemic and your business just going through some kind of a hard time. You have to have something that can help you get through, because that hard time is only temporary, but the good times are temporary too. So it's kind of, you got to have a balance. You know what I mean? So with the pandemic though, it's the things that I probably wish I would have did a little different. Is just been better prepared, I guess, as far as what Dwayne said, taking it a little bit more serious, because I'm in the industry where, people need fuel. So, the industry is somewhat recession-proof. At the same time, a lot of people don't buy fuel every day. So things can slow down dramatically, but they can't pick up just as dramatically. But it's, like I said, it's just a balance that you have to kind of figure out.
Excellent. And George, how about you? What about this past year stuck with you? What was memorable about this past year for you?
Well, Dave, is I think Lay and Duane and Tavares talked about a lot of it, but I will tell you, one of the things, even though my business wasn't impacted, I got a lot of business friends that were basically shut down. So one thing it really taught me about how you have to make sure you diversify your business, so you're not just stuck on one line of business. And if that one line of business fell, you're done. You just can't find that to be acceptable. The other thing, of course, about availability of working cash flow in order to manage your business, and that is something that applies all the time. But one of the other things that came out during like the worst part of the pandemic, when people couldn't come in the office, I had employees calling me, begging me to be able to go into the office. They wanted to get out of their house. I won't mention that a lot of them who wanted to get out of the house had young kids at home. So they're like, George, can I just go in the office? I know no one's there. I'm not gonna bother anyone, but can I go to work? But there was and some people need it for printing or just different things. But we all didn't recognize how much that meant to be locked in and confined to a small quarters and couldn't go anywhere. I mean, it was a point where, like you heard before, nobody was driving. I had to travel a couple of times. Planes that I used to be on that were totally full, there was less than 10 people on that plane. And the people that were on there were like scared to death. Like, should I be on this plane or what? But it's just those small things in life that you take for granted. Man, it was a real eye opener, because you felt like you were in a third world or something. It felt like it was a zombie land. But just in terms of mental human health. Like, what can you do to make sure you're not taking that for granted all the time? I think we all got an education on that over the past year and a half. And but from a business perspective, I think the diversification, availability of cash flow, and allowing people access to keep that mental stability, those were some key learnings for me.
Excellent. Well, obviously, this has been, to a certain degree, seemingly like a social experiment. You know, how long you take being at home. You know, a lot of people, probably thought of being able to work from home as, something that, would be, thrilled to be able to do, let alone to do it for a year. But, now that we've been here, I think some people, I agree, would tell you that, it's nice to get out of the house and nice to be able to go into the office and just to see something different for a change. First time I went into the office once the pandemic started, I was told I couldn't wait in there. The pandemic brought about new territory for all of us. So it's wonderful that the people on this panel, that you all have been able to get through the way that you did. We learned a lot from you today. A lot of great suggestions. A couple things that stuck with me were when assistance is made available, like the PPP loans, don't wait. As soon as those things are made available, get out there, get your paperwork, and make sure, as was said before, make sure that you have all your paperwork together, so that when these opportunities come by, you can take advantage of them. And the thing is, I've heard some people, say that the amount of money that they were able to get wasn't nearly as much as they were hoping for it. I think you kind of have to take, whatever you can get, take it. There's no such thing as bad help. So any assistance you can get, I think, goes a long way toward helping you to keep the doors open, if you will. So those are some of the takeaways that I had. Hopefully, those of you watching this, had some things that you came away with, and certainly I hope our panelists came away with some ideas. I believe Dwayne has already come away with an idea of a different business stream that he's going to investigate, which is good. But I really enjoyed this time, and I appreciate your time and letting us learn from your experiences. And hopefully we'll get a chance to do this again in the future. Well, not the pandemic, but at least to get together, again in the future. So that's it for me. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for those in the audience for being with us. We appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you. Take care, Lay and Dwayne and Dave.
Thank you. Wait a minute. Hold it.
He's making sure of that, right, Dave?
Show me one more time, Ashley. Okay. All right. Oh, there we go. Got it.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
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 Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Dave, and all our amazing panelists for that awesome presentation. Thank you also to Danielle Bly for joining us today and for your support. We're looking forward to a strong comeback of our utilities and transportation industries, as well as all industries affected by COVID-19. Wow, I cannot believe that we have come to the end of our CBOF54 conference. I hope that you have enjoyed our virtual platform. As we prepare for our final day's wrap up, I would like to once again personally thank you for joining us for this conference. We appreciate you understanding our need to pivot to a virtual platform, and we also appreciate your continued support, albeit this change. We look forward to a much anticipated in-person CBOF next year, and we have already begun the planning. So we hope that you're already planning to join us.